Welcome back to r/LegalAdvice, where people ask questions, get advice, and we get satisfaction. If you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, Colleague's Landlord Seemingly Not Entirely Above Board and Now the Bank Wants to Reclaim the Property. What rights, if any, does my colleague have? Please bear with me, this question is based around loose information without specifics on behalf of someone who doesn't use Reddit, but I figured here would be an excellent place to ask what little I can make of the situation. Brief backstory, colleague has been living in a property in East London for a little over a year and a half with 4 other people, all who have started living there since she has. The landlord, from what I've been told, is questionable. Their contract to live there is a text message that has been printed out and signed by said landlord. I am not aware of any occupant having any formal printed contract with the expected clauses or even the basics like a gas safety certificate, details of their deposit protection, energy performance certificates, none of it. This alone, alarm bells. Through whatever methods, their relationship with said landlord has been relatively harmonious so far, apart from the occasional utility breaking down and repairs being considerably delayed. However, the current issue, the agent has phoned the occupants today to inform them that the lender is taking action to reclaim the house and that they shouldn't pay to the landlord's account because it will go straight to the bank. The landlord is supposedly negotiating on behalf of the occupants until the end of April, but based on previous landlord action, I am taking this with a pinch of salt. Colleague wants to know her rights, housemates want to go cold turkey on the agent and landlord and break the lines of communication. Thus far, I have advised my colleague to not cut off the one source of information they have with this predicament. Now the questions, with consideration of the virus adjustments to housing, what, if any, rights does my colleague have in this situation? Number 2, given significant lack of documentation and certain telltale signs, for example, despite not living there, the landlord entering property without occupant notification or permission, is it possible or probable that the occupants have been considered lodgers all this time instead of tenants? Or anything with less protections than lodgers if such a position exists legally? What extra advice can I pass on at this time? If nothing else, I've been advising my colleague to GTFO and to live somewhere else with a more reputable landlord/agent for months now anyway, but I have also provided her with contact details for shelter and now, having been reading the wiki, will do so for citizens' advice. I'll do my best to answer any questions, but at the moment my own information is limited. A couple of extra questions that is probably not important, but for my own curiosity and should not be focused on. The landlord knows the occupants live there and of course agrees to it. If their contract does not satisfy legal requirements and is invalid, would that technically make them, for a lack of a better term, paying squatters? If so, would they be subject to any legal issues as squatting in a residential property is illegal, or does the essential agreement of the landlord change the circumstances of their status? And a user in the comments said, they are clearly tenants, the landlord is not going to be able to get around that. The law is flexible in that tenancies have a minimum set of rights even if there's no written agreement, which there isn't required to be in a lot of cases. As tenants, then, the landlord's failure to comply with deposit requirements leaves them open to a deposit claim from each tenant. Is the property a licensed HMO? And OP answered, just looked up the address in the relevant council HMO register, no entries found. Another user said, needs a HMO license for sure if 5 people are sharing, looks like agent might be trying for unlawfully evicting tenants without due notice. Maybe they realize they are committing an offense. Maybe they are worried about rent repayment orders. I would recommend friend contacts local council HMO team for advice. Even if there is a license, then the license holder needs to abide by terms of the license, and the council likely to take issue with the agent/landlord issuing notice in this way. Lack of agreement doesn't make them squatters by receiving rent a tenancy has been agreed. Does the tenant pay agent or the landlord? Is the agent a member of a redress scheme? And guys, please let me know in the comments if you are also interested in legal advice stories from the UK. Update to the colleague's landlord seemingly not entirely above board story. The agent phoned my colleague to tell her that the house is now owned by the bank and that the occupants have to be out in 2 weeks. The agent has stated that the occupants will not be given this in writing. My colleague questioned the legitimacy of the claim to begin with and looked up the land registry document to see who the lender was and confirmed that her landlord is indeed the owner. The register extract of the title shows that the address of the property and the address of the registered owner are one and the same. Would this be indicative of the property not being intended for the purpose of renting, whether or not consent from the lender was given for letting? Furthermore, would the HMO issues mentioned in the last thread no longer apply if this is not a property designated for rental in the first place? And a user in the comments said, you should read and understand the guidance here. The lender has to write to you, so the agent saying, you will not be informed by writing, is incorrect and suggests something is amiss. Specifically, the lender must write to, address to the occupiers ahead of any court hearing. They must write again when they are applying for bailiffs to evict you. They can then evict you 2 weeks after this. The crucial point is that you can ask at the hearing or after the hearing for the eviction to be delayed by 2 months. Final update to the colleague landlord story. Hi all, the end resolution of this post and subsequent follow-up here. Turns out the landlady was full of crap, there was no repossession, she just wanted all the tenants out. Following the advice previously given here and asking some friends in the know, we hit this from multiple fronts. We contacted the shelter who primarily gave the tenants the same information as you kind folks about the tenants' rights, the possibility of RRO and the ineligibility of an S21 due to HMO violations and lack of mandatory documentation for renters. Also contacted CAB who were less helpful. We also contacted the county court and submitted a witness statement requesting the tenants be added to ongoing proceedings as interested parties. Officially, my colleague was told this would not be possible without a county court reference number. Unofficially, one phone operator might have said a little too loudly to a colleague that he was struggling to find any cases involving the landlady or the address given. My colleague's fellow tenants got in touch with the London Renters Union who sent a very angry letter to the landlady informing her of the correct procedures that should be adhered to and that they would gather a group to protest on the date that the landlady wanted everybody out, which is today. This kicked up a bit of a hornet's nest. In the last 2 weeks, the landlady has cancelled internet to the property and reinstated it very bloody quickly at the mention of contract violation and harassment, repeatedly asked the tenants when they are leaving and proceeded to come to the property to inspect it, and was met with some very upset tenants who just wanted to be left in peace while they looked for new places to live. Tensions were pretty high to the point where the police were called. The landlady was caught in various lies to the point where my colleague produced a binder we made containing all the research we have done and screenshots of all conversations sent by both the landlady and her agent. She also admitted, on body cam no less, that there was no repossession. Eventually, the landlady accused my colleague, a 5-foot blonde lass, and the police of intimidating her. She kicked off further and the police removed her from the property to prevent a breach of the peace. Since then, the council have been involved where it emerges the landlady tried to pull this with another house she rents out a few roads away. Fun fact, we discovered it is listed as a business property on company's house with the landlady as the director of the company associated with that property. There is an ongoing dispute with the council for that property as well. The council are taking things forward from here, assisting the tenants with their RRO to the first tier property chamber, and the tenants are staying at the property until a section 21 is issued, which again likely contested due to the varying violations mentioned earlier, or they find somewhere new to live. Whether they are paying or not, I don't know. Colleague is done with the drama and has found a new tenancy already, and I insisted she would find a landlord who provides her with the requisite documents and a proper sodding tenancy agreement. Thank you all for your help and guidance, it's been a wild ride. And to be honest guys, that's not exactly the dramatic ending I was hoping for, but I have to say even more so than the normal legal advice. Legal Advice UK is one of the subreddits where I have pretty much never seen any fake stories, to be honest. Either way, if you enjoyed the legal advice stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, Pennsylvania, parents bought a house 6 years ago. 2 separate groups of people have come around claiming to be previous owners who left something there and would like to look around to find it. Actual previous owners died at the end of February. Writing on behalf of my parents, my father had the pleasure of meeting the first 3 people to visit 2 weeks ago, claiming they used to live there in the 2000s and left some items they needed back. My dad told them to go away and it is his house now, the right response I think. The actual previous owner owned the house since the late 1970s until mid-2014 when my parents bought it. Just last weekend another couple came around making a similar claim, but they were very pushy, threatened to do my father for theft, threatened to bring the police around and told my dad he probably knew exactly why they were there. My dad pushed back and demanded they tell him precisely what they thought they wanted from inside the house, but they wouldn't tell him anything specific. One of them let slip something like they would know when they found it. They didn't get anywhere or do anything like phone police and left. I am running scenarios around in my head that when the previous owner died, he had a will that left people something really valuable that was hidden in my parents' house. What would their responsibility be if there was something hidden in the house and left in a will? Do my mother and father own it? Would that depend on the value? If it was unknown at the time of purchase, does its ownership stay with the previous owner? Is there a blanket way to stop people coming to the door and being pushy like the last couple? I guess that's not possible without armed guards, but maybe if we had a copy of the will, it could be resolved or worked around. Are wills public? My father's plans to tell the next people to visit that he knows what they are looking for and it's been sold, but I don't think that is a good course of action. I don't know if the item even exists or if it is something like great-grandpa's forgotten childhood sled or a bank robbery from 50 years ago with proceeds packed in the walls. Imagination goes wild, but there's something that some multiple someones think is there. I'm especially worried about how pushy they might get if they get my mother alone, as she's not as forceful as my father. And someone in the comments said, this sounds like a scam that 1 will allow a stranger inside your home to burglarize it right in front of you, and or number 2, allow someone to scout your home and make notes of valuables for their pals to burglarize later. Don't let them in, call the police if they show up again. And the next one said, the Occam's razor is that these people are burglars. Once they gain access to the house, they could pull a weapon and demand money, ATM cards, etc. Or one distracts your dad while the other steals valuables. Tell your dad to tell them no, tell them to leave and report trespassers to the police. It is a bad idea to make up a story like he is thinking, just trespass them. He should not engage with them more than necessary and shouldn't play along with their scam. And another user said, former police officer here, not a lawyer. None of these people, even if anything they said was true, has any right to access their house. The only way they should be even considered is if there is a court order and a real police officer there with them. However, when your parents bought the house, they assumed ownership of everything on and in the property that was not specifically excluded on the purchase contract. And by the way, Ripe Stars, some of you might wonder why I am not doing more legal advice nowadays, because it was really popular on my channel in the past and I read so many legal advice stories. However, the truth is that there are not that many good news stories, especially with interesting updates anymore since the virus pandemic started, and also like 3 or 4 of the websites that I use to get old legal advice stories have simply shut down, so it is quite difficult for me to look for older legal advice stories that we haven't read yet. Update to the PA story. After my first post, my parents had another person visit who was also much like the previous ones, aggressive and wouldn't take no for an answer. They were also contacted that same day by someone claiming to be an executor for a will, and that person was much more sensible, but Dad still told them he wouldn't hand over anything but to contact his lawyer, which they understood and did so. We found out via the executor and Dad's lawyer that there was a will where the previous owner indicated some belongings accessible with a set of keys in a distinctive described key pouch. Not long after Dad moved in, he had found that exact set of keys while while renovating the bathroom and almost threw them out as they didn't match any locks in the house. They had been tossed in a kitchen drawer for years. Dad's lawyer said there was no reason not to hand the keys over, but no reason to do so either, and it was up to him. He handed the keys over to the executor through his lawyer. I would have expected if anything was left to someone in a will, the executor would have the power to drill any locks needed, but we guess it just makes their life easier. There were about 30 keys. It is not the proceeds of a 50-year-old bank heist hidden in the walls, but a little bit interesting. And the next one is titled, I left some volatile gummy bears on the desk and now my coworker wants to sue me. This is in Michigan. I am originally from Germany and very unsure how the law works in the United States, so bear with me. Last year I received a job offer to work as an assistant professor in the German language department at a large university in Michigan. I recently finished my PhD and was really excited to fill a research position and possibly postdoc position in the specific field I applied to. Most of my time I give classes in German literature, but additionally the university would like me to help students with writer's block, so I joined an interdisciplinary workshop. There are at least 4 people connected to this workshop and we get along fine most of the time. Sadly, there is one elderly woman who made me out as a rival day 1. I don't know what provoked her, but there's something about me that makes her mad. Cue the incident. I had an appointment with a student, gave him some tips and instructions and left my bowl with gummy bears on the desk. Mind you, these gummy bears are sugar-free and volatile. If you eat more than a handful, you are in serious fart troubles and you will occupy the toilet bowl for the rest of your day. But my coworker ate the whole bowl. First she excused herself from any commitments and then she called in sick. The next day she confronted me and blamed me for the whole ordeal, that I deliberately placed those gummy bears and it was all a ploy to humiliate her. According to her, she has already informed HR and her lawyer and that I will be kicked out of the country in no time. The only thing I can blame myself on is that me and my colleagues giggled at her bowel distress signals. Picture of the culprits. Oh guys, and I actually know those, I have eaten them before, and OP is right, you definitely should not eat too many of those, and it even says so on the packaging. And the next one is an update to the gummy bear story. We are still in Michigan. I had a, I guess a fruitful conversation with HR yesterday. My coworker and I had separate interviews yesterday, no blaming, just telling what happened and how our workplace could be improved on in the future. I make it quick. Her side of the story looks like this.
Herbie Castle deliberately placed sweets laced with laxatives in the commonly shared office space to make me and other people sick.
My side. I forgot my bowl with gummy bears, which I gladly and generously share with everybody in my department, not assuming that anybody would eat the whole bowl of sugar-free gummy bears. That would be an argumento ad common senso, I assume in legal terms. I even brought an original German gummy bears packet with me to prove that I did not mean any harm. True story though, my pants had been, were and have been shed during the last couple of days, and that without any laxative gummy bears. I hope these tenses fit. Hard to believe, but we talked during lunch yesterday and made up. She's a nice lady in fact, but had issues with food allergies in the past. And I would love to just close this story with a "we reconciled and everything was fine." But there was another major bit of a wow moment in the room when I learned that both hostile coworker and me have already been put under scrutiny, HR words, by another assistant professor who had also joined in on our workshop project. Is this effing Game of Thrones? And RIPE stars, unfortunately we have already reached the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content. However, if you cannot wait for more RIPE content, then I suggest you head on over to patreon.com/RIPEYouTube, where you can find more exclusive Reddit content read by me. Patreon subscriptions start at just $1 per month, and for $1 your name will show up at the end of each of my new videos. However, if you are willing to spend $3 per month, You will get access to more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos, mostly just no mother-in-law stories. However, please understand, I don't want to pressure anyone into spending money, because I am already incredibly grateful that you watch my videos every single day. Thank you so much for your daily support, it really means the world to me, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for the next video.